Alright, so it's another week with a ton of AFL trade news to, of course, go over. In the last video, I actually did talk a lot about the fact that Richmond were extremely interested in Nicholas Madden. They were going full steam ahead for him. They were offering him, some decent money, all of the above. Unfortunately for the Tigers fans, Nicholas Madden actually re-signed, pretty surprisingly, with the GWS Giants, not only re-signing with them, but also taking a pay cut to stay at the Giants, who he's currently been in and out of the team throughout a lot of the year on, and I feel like was going to get a permanent, opportunity with Richmond going forward and being their future ruckman. He decided to take less money, take a massive pay cut, and re-sign with the GWS Giants, which I still find to be pretty shocking. I figured, you know what, we'll kickstart today's news off with that because I'm low-key pissed. Let's not be pissed for the rest of the video. Obviously, as a massive Richmond fan, because I'm not going to lie, I did want Nicholas Madden. I thought he was going to be a really, really nice option. I actually was kind of hoping we were going to get him, but of course that didn't happen. Some other news, it was reported that Lachie Neale actually met with Brad Scott about a potential future at Essendon, which is being reported by Mitch Cleary. The Lachie Neale situation is really getting interesting because we now do know that there are some teams who are really solidified in this Lachie Neale chase. We have heard that Collingwood are extremely interested in him, according to this picture as well. You can see made by 7. Essendon are still interested in him, even though Brad Scott is no longer their coach, and they're an absolute basket case at the moment, to say it politely. But St Kilda are also interested in Lachie Neale. We know that St Kilda have been interested in him for some time. They are reportedly going to offer him the exact same contract that Collingwood are going to offer him, which should be about a 3-year deal worth $3 million. But we've also heard as well that Lachie Neale has met with the boss. Lachie Neale is expected to meet with St Kilda coach and his former Dockers mentor Ross Lyon this weekend, so that's already gone. He's met with them. Collingwood are still the favourites, but Saints are exploring it. Lions have a 10-day break, post-clash against Geelong. So this is going to give Lachie Neale some time to, I think, really make his decision. He was actually interviewed after his most recent game by Fox, where Fox did ask him, is the 10-day break going to help you make your decision? Are you going to use it to make your decision, basically? Lachie Neale saying not really, like he could genuinely just stay with the Lions, and they're going to figure out how that goes at the end of the year and all this type of stuff. But let's be honest here, if we're being bloody fair to him, Lachie Neale he's going to decide within, I think, the next 10 days. He's going to be doing a lot of research. He's going to be meeting with a couple different clubs. We know there is some expectation that he's going to be meeting with clubs in secret. We've heard a lot of rumours that Adelaide are really, really pushing to try and get Lachie Neale. Neale originally being from South Australia, that would make sense for them to have interest in him. And they're in a pretty good situation right now, the Crows. They're probably 1 or 2 players away from really being a premiership team. They're obviously already trying to get Zach Bailey. They've offered him a, 7-year, $10 million deal. But they're trying to now get Lachie Neale as well. So I genuinely believe, don't be surprised if Lachie Neale, he's met with probably Collingwood last week. He's probably just met with Ross Lyon over the weekend. He's probably meeting with Adelaide, doing a couple other different things here and there. Don't be surprised if a surprise team pops up. We know that Fremantle were heavily interested in him, but after the massive money offers that he's getting, don't seem to be as interested now. It's going to be very interesting to see where Lachie Neale, of course, does end up. The only thing I do know is I doubt it will be Essendon, They could offer him freaking $2 million a year and a night with Natalie Portman from Star Wars Attack of the Clones, or Sydney Sweeney in 2026, and that's pretty hard to turn down, but I think Lachie Neale would probably turn it down to not play with Essendon, which, even Essendon fans will tell you that. It's not even me hating on them. I actually think Essendon have got a good future. I just don't think Lachie Neale is a part of that future. But obviously, with Lachie Neale expected to leave Brisbane and, Zach Bailey looking more and more likely to leave Brisbane, there has been a report here by Mitch Cleary which does suggest that the Brisbane Lions have more than $1.5 million to spend in this upcoming free agency and trade period. Mitch Cleary saying that Brisbane coach Chris Fagan, watching today's Essendon vs St Kilda game with list boss Dom, holy crap, that text is long and that's not his middle name, Dom Ambrogio, I think is how you say his name. If free agents Lachie Neale and Zach Bailey do depart, the Lions will have more than $1.5 million to spend in their cap. Having previously met with Bombers defender Jordan Ridley. Seems like, and they kind of mentioned this in the commentary, that the Lions probably were, scoping out what's going on with Jordan Ridley. They've been, I think, as this post says, they've met with him. They want to see if he's going to be a future Lion and what that could maybe look like if he was on the team. From what we've heard, Ridley has requested a trade last year to Queensland just for a change of scenery. He's going to do the exact same thing this year. And one of the actual reasons behind that is because of Brisbane's incredible ability to actually get players who are struggling with particular type of injuries back on the park. They did it really well with Joe Danaher. They got him back on the park and really improved him as a player. They did it very well with Lincoln McCarthy. He left the Cats to, go and try and do that over there as well. That was a massive improvement for his life and getting off the injuries and whatnot over there on the Lions. And from what we've heard, Jordan Ridley is going to maybe look to do that as well with Brisbane. Now, it's going to be interesting. I mean, does Ridley make sense for Brisbane? Maybe. Do you go with the risk considering when Jordan Ridley is actually fully fit? He's, in his prime, he was like nearly a top 50 player in the comp, basically. I think maybe even competing for All-Australian 40s. Do you go and do that? You look at it. But, it's going to be interesting to see because they're probably thinking, hey, we're still in this premiership window. We've got $1.5 million to spend. Where are we actually going to go and spend that? And I've had an idea on this channel before, which is, at face value, it sounds like a bad idea if you're Brisbane, but I think they're going to look at a lot of different alternatives and how they can improve this team / stay in the premiership window. One player I think they could definitely go and look at, and please do not, be shocked when I say this name. Do not be like, oh my God, what the hell is this bloke in a freaking brown jumper talking about? But one player I actually think they could potentially look at does happen to be Jacob Hopper. Now, you guys were probably pretty shocked about that, and you probably did think, what is this bloke in the brown jumper talking about? But as I've said before, Richmond have about $4 to $7 million to spend in this upcoming free agency and trade period. There has been a lot of rumours that the Tigers are going to look to move on Jacob Hopper, and there has been rumours that the Tigers are actually going to look to pay off some of his contract. I actually think with Richmond now striking out on Nicholas Madden and, even if they do get Zach Butters, they're still going to have enough money to do this. But I actually think there's a massive chance Richmond just pay off the whole entire contract in general, which should be about $2.8 to $3 million owed. Originally, it was said that his deal was $750K per year, but then there's rumors it's been $1 million back-ended. So probably about $2.8 to $3 million he is owed over the next 3 years. The thing I see with Jacob Hopper is he's had some really bad issues with injuries at Richmond. He's had a crappy run, but when he actually was injury-free last year, he had one of his best years, and that was even playing with a guy in Tim Taranto who creates a very one-dimensional midfield with him. They're very similar as players, and there wasn't a lot of diversity in there, and Hopper was still able to have a really good year last year. But this year, he's kind of sucked. Richmond need to move him on because he's too similar to Taranto. They play too similar, and they're bringing in the young midfielders now. I have said if Brisbane really want to look at a couple free agents and a couple trade players here and there, I actually think Hopper would be a great decision because not only would he be a great player to fill the void in that Lachie Neale does actually leave, he can, I think, play that role. But you would get Jacob Hopper effectively for free. You could probably pay him like, you give him a 3-year deal, 100k, 200k each year, because Richmond would be paying him $3 million to not play for them. And Hopper would probably, he would accept that, of course. Imagine it, you get offered an extra $300,000 to $600,000 over 3 years, guaranteed money just to move over to Brisbane and play for a much better team. Who would say no to that? So I actually think it'd be a really good idea. Brisbane effectively get him for free. Yeah, you'd have to give something up to get him because a healthy Jacob Hopper is still a pretty good player. But yeah, I mean, Tigers are going to pay off his contract. I think they're going to pay a decent amount of it off. Will they pay all of it off? I'm actually getting more confident they will as the day goes. I think I talked about it in last video, but you know, Marshall potentially might be leaving. He has a lot of Victorian teams interested in him. Could definitely request the trade. He's not getting the opportunity right now. If Richmond look at Sam Marshall and say, hey, we really like him, we'll pay all of Jacob Hopper's contract off and we'll trade Jacob Hopper to you and maybe a future third or something, and all we want is Sam Marshall. I mean, Brisbane will look at that because Marshall's not in the team right now for Brisbane. Could he be a replacement for Lachie Neale? Maybe. Going to be a much longer term thing, and Brisbane are really in the window right now. And you get Jacob Hopper for free, a guy who, when healthy, can average you 23 disposals per game, a good contested inside player. Yeah, I think they look at that one. That's a theory of mine for sure. But obviously, yeah, there's a lot of Brisbane Lion news going on over there. We have heard as well that that the Bombers, are tabling a new multi-million-dollar deal for Jed Walter. According to Callum Toomey, Essendon has raised its offer to Gold Coast forward Jed Walter, with the Bombers tabling a new deal worth close to $6 million over 5 years. However, Walter is still weighing up multiple contract options to stay at the Suns amid wide interest. Yeah, don't be surprised if by the time this video comes out, he's probably even re-signed, which is why I'm scared to talk about this. If he has, skip ahead, because it probably will have happened. But yeah, that's a lot of money. Even if he has re-signed, that's a lot of money, which proves to me that Essendon, I think, are going to be big players, or are going to try to be this year. They're probably going to fail at it, being big players in the trade market and free agency. But it really does tell me that next year, when they're probably going to even have more salary cap with them moving on Ridley and Merritt, yeah, don't be surprised if next year they really do go hard for a lot of these players. And look, some of you guys might be like, yeah, they could have more money next year, but in the AFL, you actually have to use all your salary cap. You can't just leave salary cap or it goes to the AFL. What a lot of teams have done historically is just give great players on their team a massive pay rise. So don't be surprised if Essendon, if they somehow have $3 million to spend this year and they don't end up spending that $3 million, don't be surprised if they go to McGrath, hey, here's an extra $500k for being our captain. Redmond, here's an extra $500k for turning down that Adelaide deal a couple years ago. That's what I said that teams have done for years. Is it true? I mean, probably. I think Richmond have done it the last year or so where they've just said, hey, we're not getting anyone. Tom Lynch, here's an extra $500k. You know, I think teams have historically been nice to players that when they do have salary cap and they don't use it. So don't be surprised if they just keep a bunch of salary cap, you know, freed up. Just give it to players on their team right now and, you know, restructure some deals, and then next year they go all in to try and get some players. So we'll have to see how that one, of course, does go on more. That's going to be really interesting. On coaching news, though, according to Mitch Cleary, it is being said that Tassie, I think, is down to John Longmire or Ken Hinkley. Basically scrolling Nathan Buckley off that list, that is huge. That is honestly actually really surprising. I mean, I think those two coaches are much better coaches than Nathan Buckley. That's no secret. But the whole narrative for a long time now has been that Nathan Buckley is probably going to be the Tasmania Footy Club's next head coach. Is that going to be happening now? Probably not. I think John Longmire could maybe go and do it. I still think John Longmire could even assess other options next year. I think Richmond could look very hard at John Longmire next year if the team does not improve at all under Adam Uze. I think there's going to be another team or two by the end of next year, probably fired and moved on their coach. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this, of course, all does go and more. But from what it looks like, could be one of the two. Does Ken Hinkley as well go into coaching next year? There has been rumours that Ken Hinkley will go wherever Zach Butters goes. So if Zach Butters does go to Geelong, which is really heating up, and I'll talk about that now too. If Ken Hinkley does go to Geelong to be with Zach Butters, that makes sense considering there is a massive chance that Geelong lose one or two assistant coaches to other teams. There's a very big chance that Essendon hire one of those two coaches that they've got, including James Kelly. Carlton, I think they're going to hire the bloke they've got now, obviously in the interim, Fraser, but they could definitely look at one of these guys. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it does unfold, but I think Ken Hinkley to the Cats with Butters makes a lot of sense. And on that Butters thing, I did hear on Triple M today, and some of you guys who were listening to Triple M probably heard about this as well, but from what we've heard, Butters and Geelong have had a meeting now, and it went really, really well. From the rumour, it could be, is that they're going to offer Zach Butters a 9-year deal. This is what Triple M was saying, a 9-year deal. First 3 years would be $1.4 million a year, the next 2 would be $1.5 million, and the next 4 would be $2 million per year. Effectively only being roughly nearly $1 million now, less than what Richmond's deal has been, with an extra year. So basically, with Richmond, he'd get to be on that contract for one less year and get paid an extra $2 million. But Geelong, we know they have an interesting way of getting free agents in. There have been rumours about them for years, how they continue to get these guys in and, what happens behind the scenes. But Geelong are a powerhouse club. They have pitched him the idea of playing with Holmes and playing with, Bailey Smith in that midfield and having one of the most elite midfields we've ever seen. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pitched him and said, hey, we'll even bring Ken Hinkley in for a year while he tries to get back into coaching, and him and Nathan Buckley can go head-to-head as their assistant coaches to try and win that Tassie job. Don't be surprised if that is something they pitch Zach Butters. I think that could be something we definitely see, and it would be very, very interesting to maybe happen. So we'll have to see how that one, of course, does go on more, but from what it was for the whole entire time, it was always said that Bulldogs were the favourite, Richmond were the second favourite, and Geelong and Hawthorn were the outside teams, and then Essendon and Collingwood were the really outside teams. But from what I feel like it is now, with the rumours that the Dogs meeting didn't go as well as what the Richmond and Geelong's pitches were, wouldn't even be surprised if the orders kind of flipped a bit. Richmond remain in the middle, but Geelong now go to first and the Bulldogs now go to third. I would not be surprised at all, and I think that is something very, very interesting, and yeah, watch that space. The other thing is too, Geelong could offer him the captaincy as soon as maybe after next year. One of the good parts about going to Richmond would be the captaincy. But if you're going to get that at Geelong after only being there for a year, which they could pitch to him, that makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't seem like Smith and Holmes are going to be, I think, the future captains. It's really hard to say. Doesn't look like that's going to be the option. They're looking for that future captain, and maybe that is Zach Butters. So we'll see on that one. But yeah, when you look at the contracts, the fact that Richmond have 1 year less than him, and he's still going to be making more at Richmond than that Geelong contract, still makes me think Richmond could be in the hunt. But that Geelong offer is nice. They're actively looking at ways to bring in Zach Butters, and they're actively looking at ways to bring in Toby Green and have these two guys work together. That is what Triple M reported today while I'm filming this. And it is something we've known of. They're really interested in Toby Green as well. That has already been reported, and I've talked about that on the channel, I believe once or twice. So that's one we definitely know that is happening. One report that we're hearing right now is saying that North Melbourne are prepared to throw the kitchen sink at Lachie Ash, per Sam McClure on the Tradies podcast. Ash will be a restricted free agent at the end of next season. Does that mean they are looking to offer the kitchen sink this year or next year? Because they clearly need to improve the backline, but they've been needing to improve the backline for quite a while. I mentioned in the previous video, I think it was, that they're really looking at Jacob Wiedering. I think next year, if I was them, I'd go balls to the wall at Jacob Wiedering, Lockie Ash. I think Ben Miller's a free agent next year. I'd be looking at all of these players because they desperately need to improve the back line. I don't think they're going to be able to do it this year. They haven't shown enough. You know, they're doing okay, but they still need to be better. Still need to fill in the positions on this team. But if next year they make the 10, they convincingly make the 10, and it looks like the only thing they need to do is improve the back line, go and offer Lockie Ash the big bucks and go and offer Ben Miller the big bucks, because those two players would be elite pickups that could actually turn you into a top 4 team with enough development and with the right coaching. So we'll see, but I can't see Lockie Ash, going at the end of this year. GWS are going to try and keep hold of him, and I think they'd like to re-sign him, especially with Toby Green most likely leaving at the end of this year, which is what we're hearing. I don't know. Even Toby Green may have even re-signed at the time making this video. We'll have to see, but yeah, we'll see. It's so up in the air what happens, but I think Lockie Ash, there is a chance he re-signs as well, and that happens. But you also got to remember, there are going to be so many other teams that are going to contend, to bring him in. I think Richmond will look at him. Essendon will look at him. A ton of these salary cap, these big market teams that are going to have massive salary caps are going to look at him, and that could definitely hurt North Melbourne's chances going forward. One big name team that we have been hearing as well are re-interested in player has happened to be Carlton. They have renewed their interest in Buku Kamas. This is officially happening, it looks like. Carlton met with Buku Kamas over the Western Bulldogs bye week, according to Riley Beveridge. They really want him. I think with the right coaching, I've said this before, I think Buku Kamas could be a good player, but he does have a bad tendency at the moment to have absolute bags kicked on him like every single time I watch this guy. And it's not even when I'm watching him. He's getting bags kicked on him when I'm not watching him. He needs to work on his game defensively, but I think a lot of it comes into coaching, and I feel like he's not really coached the right way. The Bulldogs clearly see that they have a plan to have him coached the right way, and he'd actually fit really good as like the third key down there behind Wadering and Dean. And it also could be like, I still think he could play with, Nick Haynes if they decide to keep Nick Haynes as well. I still think that is a realistic option. You can always have him and Haynes as like the third and the fourth tall down there. I think that could always happen. We'll have to see if they do keep Haynes on what that's going to look like. But I think Buku Kamas actually makes a lot of sense for the Carlton Footy Club, and I think that one makes a lot of sense. As of late, though, we have been hearing that the St Kilda Footy Club are going to be yet again trying to attack the free agency and trade market in the AFL for another year. They were very, very aggressive last year when they had about, I think it was $4 to $7 million in the end to spend. They brought in Koning, gave him the second biggest deal in the AFL. They gave Naz the highest paid contract in the AFL as well per year. Just last year, they gave Filippo a massive $1 million per year deal, which has been reported by a couple different news outlets. Flanders got a big deal. Silvani got a big deal. They had a lot of money to spend, was the bottom line there. But from what we know, they were even going to go bigger last year when they actually tried to get Leka Lear into the team. We know that when Silvani signed with them, they did pull out of the Leka Lear deal. They were going to pay him, I believe, $800 to $900K for 5 years to bring him in, which was a lot of money for a guy who was relatively unproven. But that didn't end up happening. They probably, used that money to maybe front end more of the Koning's deal, to maybe front end some other players' deals, and they used that, to make that happen so they could probably have some more money to spend now in 2026. The other thing you guys have pointed out is the St Kilda Footy Club, from what we know, have front-ended a couple of these contracts. So De Koning's first year or two might be on 1.7 million, but later on it will go down to like 1.3 million, 1.2 million in the final years of the deal. This basically means that St Kilda, with that Leka Lear deal vanishing, like my father, basically that deal in mind, and De Koning and whatnot probably being front-ended, kind of maybe alludes to the fact that they've got some money to spend in 2026 now. So we have seen that Darcy Wilson is getting massive deals. We did see that Tom Morris said on Channel 7 that he believes that the deals are going to be up to $1 million a year, and maybe even has years that reach 1.2 to 1.3 million. We have heard all of that. Darcy Wilson, though, has also said that he is very happy to be at St Kilda, and it looks like there is still a chance of him re-signing. If we're going to say that he does re-sign with the Saints on a deal that looks like 800 to 900k per year, maybe back ends to about $1.3 million, that effectively means that the St Kilda Footy Club have now just used that Leaker deal that they were going to offer him last year that they obviously didn't bring him in. So that money's gone. But from what we're hearing, they're interested in other players here and there. Lachie Neale has been one that they have particularly been interested in. Has been said that they have offered him a deal which matches Collingwood's deal of 3 years, $3 million. $1 million per year. To me, that kind of means that they probably think they have about $1 million to spend in this upcoming free agency or trade period, or to use better words, they know they have $1 million to spend per year on these players. So, if we're going to take that into account and they don't get Lachie Neale, let's just say Lachie Neale does go to Collingwood, or he re-signs at Brisbane, or he goes to Adelaide or West Coast, whoever it might be. That means they've got $1 million to play around with. So, who are they going to spend that $1 million on? There have been some names that have started to come out. We have heard that St Kilda has shown interest in Port Adelaide key forward Ollie Lord, being reported by Josh Gabelich of AFL.com. St Kilda has shown interest in 197cm key forward Ollie Lord. Lord is out of contract at the end of the season and is yet to receive an offer from Port Adelaide. Now, Ollie Lord's an interesting one. It's hard to judge where he is as a player. Is he going to be a good key forward down the line? Maybe. He's been in the system for a couple of years now. He probably hasn't developed into being the player a lot of people thought he was going to be. But St Kilda might think they have some hope here. They might think if Port Adelaide haven't offered him a deal yet, and they might offer him a deal that it's expected that they do, you're probably going to be able to get Ollie Lord for like the AFL average, which is about 500 to 550k per year. That's an interesting one, because if you look at that and they were able to get Ollie Lord for 500k, they could go out and get another player. Now, this is interesting for a lot of different reasons. Ollie Lord fits in a need. He fits in a need that St Kilda have, which I believe is an extra key forward. I think Max King fills that need. But even if Max King does come back from injury next year, which hopefully he does, touch wood he does, man, that means I still believe they still need another key forward. So they might be looking at Max King and Ollie Lord in the same forward line, with Royal Marshall being another tool down there when he is resting, from the ruck, and De Koning's in there. Maybe that's what they're looking at. Maybe they just think Max King comes into it, Caminiti can be a second option, or maybe they're thinking, hey, Ollie Lord, if Max King doesn't come in and play, Ollie Lord is the guy that's going to be the new number one key forward for the team. So maybe that's what they're thinking, right? New number one key forward for the team. But it does make me think, are there other players that they are currently looking at? From what we've heard, they're not specifically interested in a whole lot of players yet. And it is still really early on. We've seen teams over the years target role players who are lesser names that somehow really get kept, under books, and we don't actually hear about it until like the trade period actually does come along. There could be a situation where St Kilda sign Lord for 500k and they sign some other player to come in and, add a nice role to this team for 500k as well. Maybe an extra midfielder, finally that missing piece. Maybe what West Coast did a couple years ago when they brought Jack Graham in. They identified him specifically as a big-bodied guy who could tag, good tackling player, good two-way defensive player, a good pressure player. Maybe St Kilda are looking at this and thinking, we need to add Jack Graham. We need that extra midfielder to come in and help us too. That could be what they're looking at. So we're going to have to see. It happens all the time. Look at last year. Richmond brought in Patrick Rechko in like the last hour of the trade period. Most AFL fans didn't even know who Patrick Rechko is. I definitely didn't know who Patrick Rechko is. And he ended up being a massive steal who looks like Richmond's first good wing since like Marlon Pickett, Camden McIntosh, Kane Lambert, Brandon Ellis, etc. from years and years ago. I look at this and I think St Kilda are going to do the exact same thing. And don't be surprised if Ollie Lord is just one of those names that we're now just starting to hear about. And if they don't, make this happen, it could be, they could just give it to another player. If they don't sign another player with the 500k, maybe they use it as an incentive to ensure Lord comes or whatever it might be. One player they could be looking at, though, is Alex Davies. It has been said that St Kilda has shown interest in Gold Coast midfielder Alex Davies, being reported by Mitch Cleary on 7 News. I don't necessarily know if Alex Davies truly fits exactly what St Kilda, fully need in that midfield. I mean, it's going to be hard to say, and it's going to be what the coaches think they need. I don't know what it is they think they need, but they need something. They need that extra mid maybe. But from what we're hearing as well, Davies has got other options too. Gold Coast still want to keep him as a depth player. Is he too good to be a depth player? Yeah, he deserves a better opportunity elsewhere, and I think another team's going to give him that. I do think Essendon make the most amount of sense for Alex Davies. I think he'd actually be the perfect pickup and would be a really, really nice addition, but that's going to be one that we're definitely going to have to wait and see how that does ultimately go. Because St Kilda get him for 500k per year, maybe. I mean, it is tough. If they think that Ollie Lord doesn't have a whole lot of interest from elsewhere, maybe they could even give him 400k a year and get Davies in for 600. But even that, I still feel like Essendon are going to come to the party and just outbid you. I think if you go for 500k, Essendon will be like, hey, here's 550k and we're going to give you a better role. If St Kilda say 600k, Essendon will be like, hey, we'll give you 650 to 700k per year and what we believe is a better role. You know what I mean? That is where it is going to come down. That is the bottom line of probably what is going to happen in that situation. So we're definitely going to have to wait and see. There is a lot to talk about with this, and it's going to come out more and more. I wouldn't be surprised if St Kilda go down this avenue. They give, Ollie Lord the 500k, and maybe they give another role player 500k. Is it Davies? Maybe. If they were to make this happen, maybe it's back-ended. Maybe he gets more money back-ended. If they were to make this happen, they get Flanders hopefully back from injury next year. Max King's back from injury next year. Do you finally look at St Kilda and you say, where are the holes? Where are the holes? We've got a superstar in, of course, Naz. We've got great players like Wilkie and Sinclair and Max King back now. We've got role players galore everywhere. Darcy Wilson and Philippa are only getting better. We've now brought in Ollie Lord to help the key forward stock. We've now brought in Davies off the bench to, help out the midfield. I mean, what more can St Kilda do? If that team doesn't work out, you got to start looking at the coaching eventually. And maybe that might be the better decision. Do you say, hey, is Ollie Lord and Davies, are those two a better pickup than a 33, 34-year-old Lachie Neale? Those two players are younger. They could be better for the team long term. They maybe fit the team better. I don't know. It's a really tough one to look at. In the perfect world, Darcy Wilson wouldn't be getting all these offers, and, they could maybe somehow get Davies, Neale, and Lord. Could you imagine that? That'd be another great off-season for them, and holy crap, they should be a good team if they made that happen. But, of course, it's St Kilda. Somehow it keeps getting messed up, and they're just very unlucky, I feel like. Again, I'd love to know all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below, though, in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you guys think about all the latest AFL trade news and rumours and whatnot. Do you guys agree with everything I've said in this video? Who do you think is going to get traded where? All of the above. Most importantly, though, please subscribe to the channel. It means a lot if you guys do that. Let me know. It lets me know that I'm doing a good job making these videos, and you guys are interested. All of the above. Subscribe to my gaming/movie channel as well if you haven't gone check that out. That will be linked down below. And give me a follow on Instagram too. Everything is going to be getting linked down below. But as I was saying, if you guys haven't already, please make sure, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts and opinions on all the latest AFL trade news, subscribe to the gaming channel, give me a follow on Instagram, and I guess I'll be seeing you guys next time. Goodbye.